I've learned my pentatonic shape. What's next? What do I do with that? I'm always playing in that same spot, and I can't ever break out of it. Let's talk about that today. So I feel like the main pentatonic shape that everybody learns is what we call position 1. The most common key I think everybody learns it in first is A, because it's right dead center in the middle of the neck. If you don't know this pentatonic shape, I'm going to go ahead and show it to you, and then we'll talk about what's next. Our pentatonic shape in A, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. That's the root note we're going for, 5th fret on the low E string. And we're going to go from the 5th to the 8th, 5th to the 7th, 5th to the 7th, 5th to the 7th, 5th to the 8th, and 5th. And some people like to go ahead and throw the 8 back in. That is position 1 of the A minor pentatonic scale. So we already know that shape. What is next? So a lot of people will jump online and they'll look up, how do I break out of the box? And they'll see things like, little tips and tricks. Oh, well, you can just slide it back this way and you can get these couple. Right? You can grab those. You can use octaves. And those are great tools once you know, in my opinion, when you know what you're pulling from. I don't believe that there is an easy way to really get outside of the box. Not truly, anyway, because if you don't know what you're doing at that time, it's just kind of guesswork. So what I really think is the best way to do it is, first and foremost, break down the pentatonic to figure out what it is you're playing, and then put in the effort and go ahead and swap and learn your next position, and keep track of what you're doing there as well. So I might turn this into a little bit of a series for those that prefer this method of learning instead of seeing a picture with a billion dots on it. That can be a little intimidating at times. But when you break it down into more simplistic patterns, that tends to have a much more powerful grasp on our recall. The next shape that you should learn from this is literally right next to it. Okay? I want to break this down first so we can kind of understand what's going on here, and then we'll move forward. This A minor pentatonic shape is being pulled from a couple different chord shapes that we already know. This definitely ties hand in hand with our caged system. I don't want to dive too theory heavy into this so as not to confuse you. That'll be much later down the road. But this is basically coming from our G shape chord pattern. Okay? In this case, it's C, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C. And if we recall back to my relative scales lesson, C major is the relative scale shape of A minor. They share all of the exact same notes. So with that being said, that's why the shape is the way that it is because it's coming from this G-shaped chord pattern. But let's talk about what the building blocks of a pentatonic scale are. Pentatonic means that there's 5 notes instead of a normal full-length scale, which is, at least in Western music, 7 notes. And our scale degrees that we have here, since we know it's a minor scale, it means it's going to have a minor third. But let's find out what they all are. We have our root, our 1. We have our minor third. That's the part that's making it minor. The 4th, the 5th, the 7th, and we return back to the 1. Now, this is really important, specifically when you're talking about lead playing, because we really want to aggressively go for those chord tones when we're playing. And for minor chords, that's going to be the root, the minor third, and the fifth. Because those are the building blocks of a minor chord. So as we continue through this, we'll take note of those all-important notes, the one, the flat third, and the fifth, and see where they stack up. So I have the one down there at the bottom, the minor third, the fourth, the fifth, so we have 1, 3, 5. The 7 could also be a good note as well, definitely something to be aware of. There's our 1 again, the minor third, the fourth, the fifth. If we grab the 1 and the minor third and the fifth, we have that minor triad, which is really nice. Fifth, the 7th, back to 1, and for those that like to hit this one, another minor third. Okay? So let's take a look at our next position. Like I said, I don't think that there's a good way to cheat this in your brain. I think it's just good to put in the work and the effort and to learn all 5 positions, which once again are all based on caged shape, movable chord shapes. So as we move forward, we would have to continue using that as our root note to get into the next one. I'll show you a cool trick though that happens with this. This next scale shape is going to utilize what I like to think of as a wall of notes from the position that you already know. I like to think of each box pattern as a room and a house, and you're just moving rooms. And we can think of some of these little transitory notes as little hallways to get into those rooms. So since I know that all of these notes are going to be a part of the next scale shape, it just means I have to learn this wall now for that scale shape. There's our root, our minor third. Instead of grabbing the 4th here, I'm going to grab it here. That's the 10th fret of the low E string. On the next string, there's my 5th again. There's my 7th. That was from the 7th fret to the 10th fret. And the root there on the 7th fret of the D string. Our next note is going to be the minor third. That's the 10th fret on the D string there. Moving forward, we have the 7th fret of the G string, the 9th fret of the G string. Onto the B string, we have the 8th fret to the 10th fret, and the 8th fret to the 10th fret. So once we get to the top here, I'm out of position. I'm landing on the 4th now. Okay? So let's run through this and discuss the scale degrees that are going on here and why we would even move shapes to begin with. Well, if these are all the same notes as this, why would I play it here? I'll show you. So we have the root, we have the minor third, the 4th, the 5th, the 7th, the root, the minor third, the 4th, the 5th, the 7th, the root, the minor third, and the 4th. Now, what's really cool is since we know this shape now and we can attach it to this one, they're both located right next to one another, and this is where that cheat sheet learning your octaves to move scale positions comes into play, because we now have access the whole scale pattern in 3 octaves. That octave is a part of the regular pentatonic shape that we know. This octave, these are all A, is also part of this one, but it's also part of this one. And we have the 3rd octave. We have this one up top here that finishes off in that pattern. And we have him right here. which is in that pattern. Now, what's really cool about that is if we pay attention when we're playing our leads, we can keep track of where those octaves are at and where we are in relation to them, so we can target those chord tones. Right? And that's just me focusing really heavily on the third and the fourth. Root, third, 4, 5. Because of that, you have access to those big chord tones now. I can look at this pentatonic shape and say, okay, the main tones that I need to focus on over an A minor chord or even an A minor 7 chord, I need that 1, 3, 5. I need the 1, 3, 5. The 1, 3, 5. 1, 3, 5. And you can see how I'm quickly able to find all of those ones, flat thirds, and fifths. Those are the important notes to grab in this. So definitely when you're playing over a song in A minor, focus on those chord tones. If you focus on those chord tones, you're going to see a lot more of your melody start coming out in your playing, and it's going to sound like you're following the song instead of playing the guessing game, which the pentatonic surprisingly is really good for guessing. It all kind of sounds pretty good. Also over that, like an A minor 7, since you have the 1, 3, 4, 5, 7 right there, 1, 3, 5, 7. That 7 is a fun one to ride as well. So you have access to 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, 3, 5, 7, 1. All of those different combinations. I think the last thing I wanted to touch on is, okay, so I know this shape now. What do I do with it? What's a good way to practice this and start integrating it into my playing? And there's a few things that I would personally recommend, at least to get your brain thinking in this way. And if you don't have this already in your practice routine, you really, really, really should. So the first thing that I would absolutely say, because we never want to just practice straight up and back down. It's good when you're learning the pattern, so don't feel bad if that's what you're doing. But once you know the pattern and you've internalized it, it's time to start doing stuff that's a little more musical with it. Because very seldom are you going to hear somebody run through a scale during a solo like that. Instead, the way I would first start this, especially if you're kind of new to this sort of stuff, I would start with note groupings of 3. Okay? What a note grouping is we're going to travel through the scale and grab the 3 notes around each note. Okay, so how we would do this, if I start on the 1, which we can use our bass pattern for this, I'll travel through it all really quickly so you can hear how it would sound, is we would grab the 1, and we're going to travel for up 2 notes. So that's 1, 2, 3 notes. Okay, then I start on the next note of my scale, which would be the minor third. 1, 2, 3. Then I start on the next one. 1, 2, 3. Start on the next one. 1, 2, 3. And so on, and so on, and so on, until we get to the top, and then we want to come down backwards. So if I'm starting here, 1, 2, 3. Start on the next note. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So I would even slide up into that. And you can hear how those note groupings there's a few things at play here when you practice this way. The very first thing that I like to take mention of is it sounds a lot more musical. These are starting to sound like riffs. It's very like Pantera, what is that, Cowboys from Hell? It's not the scale he uses, but that is the pattern that he's using for it. The next thing that happens is because we have to adhere to the actual notes themselves, it's causing our fingers to move in ways that we might not normally move them. Especially once you dive into like note groupings of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Definitely tell I'm not warmed up. But you can hear how that sounds much more musical, and it's causing my fingers, I'm having to kind of contort and move in slightly uncomfortable ways to achieve those patterns, and that's what we want. The guitar is a beautiful instrument in that, you know, in order to get really good at it, it's nice to be able to play things, the same exact things, in different places that are more uncomfortable because it gets us used to those movements. The more that you do that, the more comfortable you'll be making those changes and finding notes that you really like but are uncomfortable so you avoided them, make them more likely to be chosen because they're good notes. The last thing I would say, you could move in fourths. So what moving in fourths would be is if that's my 1, my 3rd, and my 4th, essentially what we'll do here is in the pentatonic scale, this works out really nicely. You don't have to think super hard about it, but we're basically picking the 1. We would skip the next note and play the next one. So 1, I'm skipping the 3rd and playing the 4th. Then I would move to the next note, play the 3rd, skip the 4th, play the 5th. And essentially, it starts turning into that sort of thing. And once again, it's a little more musical. This is something a little more practical that's going to be happening in your playing, especially when you're playing lead. And especially when you're learning other people's solos, you'll definitely start, as you practice this way, you'll start seeing those patterns pop up in people's lead note selection. You'll see them. They sound good, there's a rhythmic quality to them, and there's a lot more movement in them than just straight up and down. Right? I think, like I said, I might turn this into a little bit of a series. Once again, that pattern. Oh yeah, and the last thing I wanted to touch on, if anybody remembers that relative scale lesson, the reason why we got to start on that A there is because if we start on A, we get to keep that minor tonality in our head. If I ditch that root note and I start with the C root note, this particular position 2 minor pentatonic shape turns into position 1 of the major pentatonic shape for C major. It's cool how relative pitches work like that, relative scales. I digress. If you guys enjoyed this, or if you have any questions, please leave it in the comments below. I'll have a link to our newsletter as well that you should definitely take a look at. It's got a lot of useful tips. We've got a lot of content getting ready to start coming out, which I'm super pumped about. I'm really excited about helping you guys level up and move into those next skill levels. I'm interested in doing that myself. But it's always growing. If you're not learning, you're standing still, and that's never what we want to do. It was a pleasure. You guys enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Get out there and practice. Once again, any questions or comments, leave them below. Link to the newsletter below. Yeah, otherwise I'm just going to keep rambling. It's a pleasure. Toodles, everybody.